Is Hand of Midas good? Is Hand of Midas a worthy investment? I've seen this brought up many times in different forums as well as Reddit over my career of playing Dota. So this is my personal thoughts on Midas itself. So let's first discuss on cost of getting a Hand of Midas. A lot of players primarily focus on the 1900 gold value and often overlook the opportunity cost of getting a Midas. In purchasing a Midas, players are foregoing early game key items such as boots upgrade, a completed magic wand, and other defensive items. Keep in mind that the opposing team, if they don't get the Midas, their item progression will be comparatively a lot faster than our hero who is getting the Midas. Though not exactly a cost, keep in mind that Midas is only compatible with few particular heroes as well. So the allure of earning extra bonus gold as well as experience might not be worth it, considering that you're saving over thousands of gold as well as being extremely vulnerable in the early outset of the game. So why are so many players considering getting the Hand of Midas? What are the payoff? Well, firstly, the 190 gold per use is great and it pays off in the long run. It isn't difficult to figure out that the Midas user have to use Midas 10 times to pay for itself, and with the cooldowns of Midas being at 100 seconds, Midas will repay itself in 1000 seconds, or roughly in 17 minutes. With the general consensus of finishing Midas before the 8th minute mark, Midas will start netting profit past the 25th minute mark. But there's definitely more to that. We're assuming that the Midas is being used the instant that it comes off cooldown, which is not generally a very realistic assumption. Losing 5 to 10 seconds if you're searching for a big neutral creep in the jungle isn't the biggest deal, but losing an upward of a minute per death due to respawn and traveling time is really significant. Remember our discussion about delaying our early game survivability just to rush Midas? Well, the lack of survivability adds to another layer of complication when you're trying to use Midas activations to pay for Midas itself, all the meanwhile being very vulnerable doing so. Of course, let's not forget the 30% increase in attack speed either, which is a little bit over half of what a Hyperstone gives you, which is pretty respectable. Even though this won't be the reason why heroes are purchasing Hand of Midas, those heroes could definitely use the extra attack speed. However, if we end the discussion right at this point, then I would personally heavily recommend against buying Hand of Midas. Getting Hand of Midas delays any quick damage or survivability items, and it really forces us to play passively so we can stay alive and activate Midas every time it comes off cooldown, and ultimately we're hoping that everything goes right. However, the 1.5 times extra bonus EXP really adds another complex layer into the discussion. The experience bonus portion of Midas is something completely unique to Dota, since no other item grants raw experience per activation. Objectively, we could say that, well, some items help us kill enemy heroes or kill creeps faster and also generate experience, but this is more or less a slippery slope argument. Hand of Midas is one of the only few ways in the game to generate long-term advantage, even though if it does so in a relatively passive way. Traditionally, on heroes that get Hand of Midas, experience or level is often overlooked compared to gold or your inventory, and I think this is really a bad way to look about it. We often take for granted how much more powerful a hero becomes when it's level 16. For example, ultimates such as Chronosphere, Wrath of Nature, or Invoke becomes increasingly powerful or increasingly better at higher levels, independent of those heroes' inventory. So just on that fact alone, we have to keep in mind that a higher level your hero is, the stronger your hero is, and of course you have certain thresholds like level 16, level 17. So when we're considering the fact that your hero could jump in terms of experience, that is a huge motivation in terms of rushing that early Hand of Midas. So let's examine the scenarios which one may consider in terms of getting Hand of Midas. No, I didn't ask the question of which hero should get Hand of Midas. Instead, I asked in what scenarios should we get Hand of Midas. As Hand of Midas is really too situational to be any hero's core item, there are more or less 3 questions we should answer in terms of getting Hand of Midas. Question number 1 is, do we have the time to generate the long-term gold and experience advantage? For example, if the enemy team is comprised of dangerous ganker or destructive pushers, Midas is almost always a dead item in your inventory. It becomes a massively overpriced way to get plus 30 attack speed, since the game might be decided well before Hand of Midas could pay for itself. This generally is the reason why Hand of Midas isn't seen in pro games too often. The item progression in pro gaming is simply too slow against the most popular picks and team composition in the current metagame. As an extension, how quickly can your hero farm Hand of Midas is a fairly important factor as well. The difference between a 4-minute Midas and an 8-minute Midas is roughly 2.5 extra activations, which equates to an extra level and free boost of speed. Even so, getting a first blood and having a pile of gold and having the ability to get the Hand of Midas quick doesn't mean you should still get one, especially against push heavy teams or gank heavy teams. Question number 2. How well can our team play 4v5? Just by item design, Hand Midas promotes passive play for the user. It's worth repeating over and over again that without multiple activations, Midas is simply an overcosted attack speed item. Midas on cooldown and the hero being dead is one of the worst scenarios possible. Generally, being alive and passively farming is the way to go if you're using Hand Midas. Even if the opposing lineup is not filled with early game pusher or ganker, can the team play without the Midas buyer for at least 20 minutes or so? It's also worth considering not only how much the team might feed by playing with one less hero, but also to determine how the opposing team might scale, as well as whether it's too high deficit for the Midas bearer to overcome by, again, our team playing with one less hero. If the answer to these questions are no, we can't actually play with 4v5, then generally you should not get Hand of the Midas. The last question would be, what are we giving up for the extra golden experience? All heroes could definitely use extra farm and use extra levels, but few will sacrifice their early game to get that advantage. For example, having a level 16 line is great when the enemy supports are at level 8, but losing out on the line for the first 15 to 20 minutes is probably worse than getting a fairly farmed and level nuker. By extension, does our hero need a particular item ASAP? Getting Hand Midas online means Lion's not getting mobility or mana item during the stage of the game where he is most destructive. For most heroes, foregoing early game items for a better late game through Hand Midas is simply not worth the exchange. So in conclusion, who actually gets Hand Midas? In pro games, most common buyers are Nature's Prophet or carriers such as Void or Sven or Lifestealer. In Nature's Prophet's case, he desperately wants to reach level 16 as soon as possible. However, despite the Hand Midas, he could still remain an asset to the team because of his teleport skill, as well as the ability to push towers with treants. For carries, the protected free farm generally allow them to accelerate into a quick Midas, and then that Midas will quickly pay for itself and will allow them to join team fights. Also in recent editions, we see Fluff and Stuff's Jungle Enchantress really use Hand Midas to rush into a quick Scythe of Ice as well. So in conclusion, Midas is naturally considered as a greedy item, and since we're generating extra gold and experience out of literal nothing, it's a very, very powerful item in certain scenarios. With that said, it also comes with a certain level of risk. The decision to get Midas or not is a very, very meaningful one, and when you're playing game, really you should sit down and kind of think about how the game will progress in the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, and whether we could answer those 3 questions and get the Hand of Midas. So ending Lumi's Muse, I kind of want to ask you guys on a particular question about Hand of Midas. What do you guys think about getting Hand of Midas on supports? Now obviously the extra gold is very, very beneficial for wards, but more importantly I feel like the extra levels is very, very helpful for support. Can you imagine a level 16 Vengeful Spirit, a support hero that could use the level very, very effectively? What about a level 16 Disruptor? Or even a level 16 Lich? There are a lot of scenarios where a support gets an accidental double kill in a team fight, and suddenly you have an extra 1400 gold sitting in inventory. And from my personal experience, I've definitely experimented with supports getting Hand Midas, and this is a question I'm just completely throwing out there, whether you guys think it's a trash idea, whether it's actually worth considering, and whether it's actually a good idea. So let me know in the comment section below. I'm actually very curious to see how many people have actually tried that, and whether it's successful for them and whatnot. Hope you guys enjoyed this little rant on Hand Midas, and until next time, this is Luminous signing off to you guys.